Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about the writing process, beginning essay 1, and how to create a thesis statement and outline so we can get you rolling on your first essay. First of all, let's start with the basics. What is an essay? I'm sure you've all written one before, but it's worth defining. In English 120 and most college level essays, you're going to write what I like to call thesis-driven essays. These are essays where you have a main point that you want to prove, an argument or your viewpoint, and it's expressed in the thesis, and that main point or viewpoint is what drives the rest of the content. Everything else supports it, proves it, relates back to it. That's your whole goal. I also like to think of a thesis as an umbrella that all the other ideas in the essay fall under. Now let's talk about the components of an essay. In general, an essay is going to have a title, an introductory paragraph, and we're going to have a lesson on those soon. And the introductory paragraph usually ends with a thesis statement. Then there will be several body paragraphs. The number of body paragraphs is however many you need to prove your thesis. In our class, this can range from 3 to 5 in your first essay, 4 to 6 in your second essay, and up to 10 in your research paper. And finally, the essay closes with a concluding paragraph. Now let's talk about the writing process. You've probably heard an English teacher tell you before that writing is a process. And that's because any good writer knows that writing involves numerous steps to be successful. We wish we could sit down and have it all come out perfectly in one shot, but that's not the case. If you've ever tried to write a good essay in one night, you know what I'm talking about. So all writers go through these general phases, though you can tweak it to your own writing personality. First, in our class, we always start with some reading to get deeper into some subject matter. But we're going to talk about reading actively. We've already read a handout about that. And this is where we read with a pen or pencil in hand and stay tuned in so we don't waste time. The next phase of the writing process is crucial. It's the pre-writing phase. This is an unfortunately often overlooked phase of the writing process because for students, you don't usually get credit for this. But this is where you generate all of your ideas. I'm going to skip ahead to my next slide and come back. Let's talk about some pre-writing strategies now. You can't write an essay or make an outline if you don't have ideas. So you've got to spend some time generating those ideas. I want to go over a few pre-writing strategies for you to try, unless you already have one that works great for you. The first one is brainstorming. This is where you just write down as many ideas as come to mind about a certain topic that you're going to write about. Kind of making a list. Oh, and the bottom line in pre-writing is that there are no wrong answers. Everything is free. You don't worry about it. You just get as many ideas down on paper. Clustering is another technique where you draw bubbles or squares and link ideas together. You've probably heard of that before. Listing is very similar to brainstorming, but if you're kind of an orderly thinker, you might want to put things in a list. My personal favorite, because it fits with my learning style, is focused free writing. This is where you sit down, either open up a Word document, or get a pen and paper, and just start writing about a topic without thinking twice about what you're saying. Then you write and write and write, get as much as you can on paper, and hopefully by the end, when you're out of ideas, you can go back through that document knowing that there are spelling errors and some ideas that seem kind of silly after you look at them. But in there, you're going to find some gems, some really good information to use as you move forward. It's just a way of getting ideas out on paper. Half of the battle with writing is getting something on paper. Once you have something there, you've at least got ideas to work with. The bottom line is for pre-writing, you should do whatever works. Whatever you need to get ideas on paper, do it. It could be a combination of these or some other strategy that you personally have developed. Whoops. Sorry. So back to the writing process. So that's pre-writing. Once you have your ideas down on paper, the next thing you want to do is make a plan or an outline. Nobody builds a house without a blueprint. In the same way, you should not sit down and think you're going to write a well-organized paper without a plan. We're going to go over how to make a plan or an outline for this first essay soon, but it's crucial. Outlines are not set in stone. You can always change them, but you will feel good going into an essay with a plan, especially as our essays get more complicated. It's like a security blanket. The next phase is to draft. How many drafts you write depends on your approach to the writing process. You might sit down and write a paragraph one day, come back to it a few hours later. You might write one draft all at once and then come back. But really, how many times you have to work on a draft depends on the assignment. An essential phase of the writing process is peer review. This is where we exchange essays with our peers to get feedback. We write for readers. So if we never ask a reader to look over our work, how do we know it makes sense? What we write will always make sense to us, hopefully, but we have to give it to someone else to see if it makes sense to a reader. So in this class, we will do structured peer review of each other's essays. Doing a peer review also makes you a better reader and writer. When you can read your peers' papers and point out strengths and weaknesses, it helps you improve as well. The last two phases are revising and proofreading, and these are actually distinctly different parts of the process. Revision means to see again, to change larger things, to add a paragraph, to delete several sentences, to expand a paragraph, to add a quotation, to make a major change to your thesis. Those are revising steps. Once you have all that done, you want to move on to proofreading. And this is where you have to go through carefully and look for spelling and grammar errors. You cannot trust grammar and spell check alone. You've got to proofread carefully on your own. I always suggest that you print out your work and read it out loud as a final proofreading technique. And then of course you're ready to turn in the final draft. We already went through these. So let's talk about the rhetorical square. This is just a device that we can use to help us get a grip on an essay assignment. And there are 4 parts since it's a square. The first is to think about your audience. And here, your intended reader for essay 1, your peers in an academic environment, meaning formal. You're writing to our class, but we're not going to use slang or informal language. But imagine that you're writing to the class. Your purpose. You always want to think about what you're trying to achieve by writing something. It's not just a grade or points for the class. Your goal here, you're trying to persuade your audience that the way you view the ad is valid. You're trying to analyze an ad and explain how it sells the product. There's more than one way to view an ad. 2 people can write about the same ad and have different interpretations. As long as you back it up, you're achieving your purpose. Your tone of voice, you'll probably want to be logical and reasonable since you're trying to be persuasive. But if your ad is somehow funny or lighthearted, you could be, similar in tone. You can always be yourself. Don't feel like you have to be some dry scientist typing away just because it's a formal essay. You can still have your personality. The message that you're trying to get across is whatever your thesis statement is. And that's what we'll just talk about next. Creating a thesis statement. First of all, what's a thesis statement? It's your main idea. It's an opinion, 1 to 3 sentences long, and it makes an argument. In this essay, it'll just be 1 sentence, but in a more complicated paper in the future, you could find yourself writing a 3-sentence thesis. Maybe not in our class, but as you move up, it's possible. Again, a thesis expresses an opinion, brings up a debatable point. Let me give you an example from the ad that I've been analyzing with you, my Oldsmobile ad. The Oldsmobile ad entices businessmen to purchase the Aurora by appealing to their need for prominence and their need for attention. If you see here, this is my opinion about an ad. I'm making an argument about how it works. I am saying that it targets businessmen. That's who I believe the target audience is. If you remember, the assignment asks you to mention the target audience and talk about 2 or 3 needs from the 15 basic appeals. And in my analysis, I focus the most on the need for prominence and the need for attention. So I've identified those in my thesis. I would not want to write down, I think this ad is misleading. You don't need to use the word I in a thesis, and that's way too general. Or just that it's directed at businessmen. That's not enough. We want to make it slightly more complex and add those needs in. Making an outline. Once you've got your thesis idea, you can think about an outline, a plan for the body of your essay. You want to develop 4 or 5 supporting points for the thesis statement, and then each supporting point can become the topic of a body paragraph. There are 2 ways that you can approach the organization of this essay. I chose to organize by major signs, so let me show you this. The Oldsmobile ad entices businessmen to purchase the Aurora by appealing to their needs for prominence and attention. I decided to devote my first body paragraph to talking about the billboard and how the billboard on my ad relates to the need for attention and prominence and establishes the male audience. These ideas fall under the umbrella of my thesis. My thesis is my larger argument, and this idea goes back and proves it. My next body paragraph is going to discuss the car and how it relates to the need for attention and prominence. Do you see how that clearly relates to my thesis and falls under its umbrella? Body paragraph 3 is going to be the antique shop, the need for prominence and attention. I'm going to describe that antique shop, everything about it, and how it relates back to the need for prominence and attention. And then body paragraph 4, I'm going to talk about the text, all the writing in the ad. The word allure, when they describe the car and say it has carved haunches. The name of the car, Aurora, and how that relates to the need for attention and prominence. So here my plan is to devote a body paragraph to each major sign in the ad. Now, if you're writing a thesis that has 3 or 4 needs in it, you could decide to organize by needs. And I can talk about that in a moment. Okay, so from that rough outline, I've created a formal sample outline. And this is what I want you to turn in to me. Complete sentences. I would like to see your thesis statement in a complete sentence and each topic sentence for your body paragraph, the main idea of each body paragraph. So again, my thesis, the Oldsmobile ad entices businessmen to purchase the Aurora by appealing to their needs for prominence and attention. My first topic sentence, in order to appeal to businessmen's need for prominence and attention, advertisers portray the Aurora as a car of class and distinction. Number 2, the antique shop depicted in the ad also targets male professionals' desire for prestige. You see, I kind of used my thesaurus a little bit, so I'm not saying businessmen and prominence over and over. In addition, the billboard above the antique shop draws in the male audience by suggesting that the car will make them stand out to women. And number 4, advertisers include carefully selected text in the ad that plays on businessmen's desire for prominence and attention. So as you can see, each topic sentence relates back to the thesis, falls under the umbrella, and I'm going to discuss a major aspect of the ad in each one. And when I say sign, I mean a major part of the ad that can be interpreted with meaning. Okay, so come back to this when you're working on your outline as an example. Alternative outline. Another way to go about this assignment is to have a thesis where you identify the ad's target audience and the 3 or 4 dominant needs. This wouldn't work for mine because I only have 2 needs. but let's say you found 3 or 4 dominant needs in your ad. What you could do then is give a body paragraph to each need. So if the first one's the need for attention, and then another one is the need for prominence, and then maybe you've also found out the need for autonomy and the need to escape, you could give each need its own body paragraph. My only caution to you in this, it might seem more simple and straightforward, but often as you start writing, you have to be careful not to repeat yourself and talk about the same things in overlapping paragraphs. But this is another potential way to structure your paper. You'd want to, again, turn it into complete sentences like the previous example shown here. So you need to do some pre-writing about your ad and then create a thesis and outline and submit it to turnitin.com by the due date. Do your best. If you're having trouble, just either email me with questions or turn in the best thing you can. I expect to give feedback and give you some tips for improving.